What's up, YouTube land? So it's supposed to be really nice over the next couple days here in Georgia, so I'm hoping to be able to get a lot of work done to the Veloster. What I'm planning on doing is mounting the strut towers into the front of the car and then I'm gonna have to mount the suspension in order to make sure that the strut towers are where they belong. Mount the suspension, mount the strut towers, and then I'm gonna try and get the engine in there and make sure all that's gonna fit. And then maybe, I don't know if I'm going to, but maybe I'll put the front end sheet metal back onto the car, the hood, fenders, and front bumper, and just see how everything looks. But I'm gonna go ahead and just jump into the video and let y'all see what I'm getting ready to do. All right, so I just got done removing the shock tower out of the passenger side. So there's the shock tower that came out. So now I'm gonna cut this one and get it to fit and weld it in. All right, guys, so I'm fitting the strut tower in here. The height is coming out right, but it's gonna be forward like I thought. So what I'm more than likely gonna wind up doing is trimming here and, I don't know, trim across here or whatever. And I'll leave this piece and then I'll make a little patch panel to go from here to the top of the shock tower. But it looks like my strut brace is gonna work, because I was worried that it wasn't gonna work because of that front cover, the rain cover, but it looks like it's gonna hit right where it needs to, and I'll be out in front of this. So yeah, pretty freaking cool. So we'll see how it goes when I get the other side in here, and then when I start finishing up all my fitment, because I don't have the back wall fit and I don't have it fit against this rail. I'm gonna get this one set up, get it fit to where this one's fit. Then I'll start making sure that the strut brace is gonna fit correctly. I'll measure for squareness to make sure that it's completely straight, and then we'll go from there. All right, everybody, so I got the front suspension mounted on the passenger side. I'm trying to locate where the center of my wheel is gonna be in relation to the fenders and everything. And it looks like I'm about 3 inches forward of where center line was originally. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fit the engine in there, see how much room I have to go back, if I can even go back anymore. If I can't go back anymore, then what I'm gonna wind up doing is extending the fenders and the back of the hood, and I'll just move the whole front end forward. I don't wanna do that. I wanna try and keep it as original as far as the body goes as possible, but I don't know if that's a possibility now because of where the wheels are sitting. So I'm gonna fit the engine in. I just got done removing the shifter off of it. So now I'm gonna fit the engine into the subframe, see how much clearance I've got on the back wall, and see where I go from there. All right, so I got the engine in there and there is no room to go back. If I get any closer, I won't be able to hook up my heater hoses. But it looks like everything else is gonna clear pretty good. So I'm not gonna have a choice. I'm gonna have to extend the front end to make this work. So not that huge of an ordeal. I didn't want to do it, but in order to make this work, that's what I got to do. So, but that motor looks really sick sitting in there. So, all right, now I got to pull the freaking motor back out, finish welding everything back together. Because when I put the motor in, it dropped the whole front end. I mean, I've got it supported with jack stands, but I know there's not enough support there to hold the motor up without the fenders welded in and all that. So, or without the strut towers welded in and shit. So yeah, it looks like it's gonna work, but I can't go back any further. That's as far back as I can go. So time to regroup, see what I got to do. All right, so I've been able to get both strut towers fit. Got the strut brace holding them together so that I know that the spacing's correct, make sure they're at the right angle and all that good stuff. So now that everything's lined up, I've got my bolts in there holding the strut towers to the frame rails in the original holes that I drilled from when I took it apart on both sides. So now I'm gonna weld that stuff back together. I'm gonna weld in across the top on both sides, and then I'll figure out my side walls on each side. Once I get that done, then I'll put the engine in here, or actually I'll put the wiring harness in here. And then I'll put the engine in here and make sure everything's gonna freaking sit in here correctly, and then we'll go from there. All right, so now I've got the front end sitting on just the tires. And it is still sitting up pretty high, but that's because there's no engine in it. When I put the engine in there, it'll load the shocks a lot more. I still think it's going to be sitting up a little bit higher than what I want it to be, but that engine's going to make it drop a pretty significant amount, I think. I'll find out after I weld everything in and then put the engine in there. I'm not going to put the engine back in there again until I get everything welded in. And then when I get the engine in there, I'll have the whole front end sitting on the ground. I'll take the back end and put it on the ground, and I'll move the car just so that I can clean up over here and get everything organized. All right, everybody, so while I've been messing around with this car, I've been trying to figure out all my clutch system and everything. So I'm using, this is the clutch pedal from the Veloster. This is the clutch master cylinder from the Genesis, and the push rod from the Veloster master cylinder. It pops apart pretty easy. You just push in on it, and then there's a little clip right there. You can push that clip out, and then the push rod will come out. Now, I held the clip on there just so the spring and everything wouldn't come flying out, and just switched the push rod. But not that I think this is something anybody's ever going to have to do other than me, but now I got to remember that if I ever replace the master cylinder, it's got to be a Genesis master cylinder, but I got to reuse the push rod off of a Veloster. All right, everybody, I've been out here welding most of the day. I still have a whole lot more welding to do. I'm gonna come back out here tomorrow. It's starting to get too dark to work. I know it looks light in the video, but it's actually kind of dark out here. So I'll get back at it tomorrow morning. Probably spend all day welding tomorrow, and then before I clean up all of my welds, I'm gonna get everything welded in, and I'm gonna set the engine in there with the wiring harness and make sure nothing's gonna interfere with anything. Make sure all my brackets and everything are gonna fit, because any cutting or welding or anything that I got to do, I want to do all of it at one shot so that I can just go through and clean everything up at one time. So I'm hoping by the end of this video to have the engine and transmission mounted into the engine, into the car, and the car sitting on the ground on its own four wheels. So I've got, trying to get out of the way, I've got it on all four wheels right now, but the back wheels are still on jack stands. The front's down on the ground, but it's sitting up pretty high because there's no motor in it. So I'm hoping that once I get the motor put in here and I get the back sitting on the ground, I'll be able to see what my ride height's going to be for the front. And then I'll adjust it to where the rear is the same as the front. And then if I need to modify, like putting drop springs or something like that on here, then I'll do it then. All right, everybody, so here's the moment of truth. The Veloster is sitting on its own suspension. Engine is completely in the car, transmission's in the car. Now you can see that the front wheel is sitting a little bit forward, so I am going to have to mess with how the front end sits. But this thing is turning out really freaking nice. And there's the V6 in there, ready to rock and roll. Sway bar or strut bar. Full suspensions in here on both sides. Whole front is basically together with the exception of the headlights and the front bumper. And I'm going to, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I don't know if I'm going to extend the front of the car or if I'm just going to move where the wheel arch is. But for right now, this thing will roll on its own. It's sitting on its own, and there's nothing underneath it holding the transmission up except for the transmission mount. I actually got lucky, and the transmission mount lined up with an existing tapped hole. I don't know how I wound up getting this lucky, but the two holes that were there originally for the transmission mount on each side of the tunnel, there was another hole, exactly the spacing that I needed, that was already there and tapped. It just had a sticker over it. So I pulled the sticker off, ran the bolts up in there, transmission mount went straight in. No modification needed. So this thing's working out way better than I anticipated. The only thing that's really going to give me a big hiccup is, so far, is the where the wheel gap is in relation to the arch. But with as much work as I've done to this thing already, that's kind of minor in my eyes. Because I have the option to where I can extend the front of the car 2.5 to 3 inches to get the wheel in the center of the arch, and then just add material in between the door and the fender, and add material to the back of the hood. Or I can just move the arch of the wheel forward, because I'm going to do wide body fiberglass fenders on here anyway. So I can cut and modify fiberglass pretty easy to move the arch forward. I'm going to do a fiberglass front bumper, fiberglass fenders, and more than likely a fiberglass hood. If I modify the hood. If I don't modify the hood, then I'll probably do a carbon fiber hood. But if I have to modify it, I'm going to do fiberglass. And we'll just go from there. But it's looking pretty freaking dope right now. I'm pretty excited with how this thing is going along. Like I say, everything's fitting pretty good. Looks like I'm gonna have plenty of clearance for the radiator and the AC condenser and all that. Like I said earlier in my last video, I still have room to get to my heater core and all that. So, and my power panel, or my power distribution block, is mounting where it used to. Power steering reservoir is mounting where it used to. The ECU is going to be able to mount where it used to. ABS controller is going to be able to mount where it used to. So I'm going to be able to use all the factory mounting points off the Genesis for all the electronics. So this is going to work out really, really nice. So now the only thing that I have left to do for the front end, obviously I got to get a hood prop. I haven't put the hood prop back in here, but I have to figure out my mount for right here at the front to mount the core support to the front of the frame rails. And that's essentially what I'm getting ready to do. But it's getting too dark out here for me to get to that point. So I'm going to stop working on this. And I'm actually going to, let me flip the camera around. So I want to give you a little quick walk around of everything that's been done to the car so far. I've got the front completely in. I have not even touched the back of the car yet, so that's all original in the back. But from here forward is the floor pan out of the Genesis, seat out of the Genesis. Dashboard frame is a combination of the Veloster and the Genesis, and then that's the Veloster heat and air unit. This is the Genesis wiring harness that's going to go on to that dash. Genesis center console is going to go in here. Genesis emergency brake cable and shifter are going to go in here. I have not installed the steering column mounting bracket to the dashboard brace yet, because I wanted to get the engine in the car and make sure the steering shaft's not going to interfere with anything. And I need to collapse the steering shaft a little bit. So, but we just put the front end on, and now you can see how off the front end is. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take and shift the arch forward. At least that's my plan for right now. But other than that, the whole front of the car fits with the engine in the engine compartment. And you can see this side's the same way. Whoops. But I'm really pleased with how this thing's coming along. So it looks like everything's gonna fit pretty good. I got wide open area up here behind the front bumper. So all my AC should work. Everything looks like it's gonna fit perfectly. I just need to put in some filler panels here so that I can put the fender wells in on each side. So once I get that figured out, because unfortunately when I was cleaning up out here, I freaking threw away these pieces, or I took them to the metal recycler and recycled these pieces, and now I don't have them. So that's why I never get rid of shit before I'm done building a car, but I was planning on selling the house. So unfortunately I screwed up. But anyway, so now I'm gonna fit the wiring harness into the body, make sure all that's gonna fit. I'm gonna mount the ABS controller, make sure it's gonna fit, and just test fit everything before I go welding in the bracket for this, because I wanna make sure that all that stuff's not gonna interfere with this when I go to put it on. So that's where I'm gonna stop. So I'm actually gonna stop working on this car for maybe the next week or two. And I'm gonna try and get some more work done to the Lexus. Terry has decided that he wants to start picking up work on it again. So we're gonna pick back up on it. Hopefully tomorrow we're gonna start working on it and get some things rolling. And hopefully I'll be able to give you a pretty serious update on the 1UZ 5-speed swap for the IS300. I know it's been a long time since I've done an update, but things have been kind of rocky over here, which you guys know. So now it's time to pick up the pace, and we'll get back into it. So like always, if you like what you saw in this video, or if it helped you out in any way, I don't know how this would have helped you out, but if you like what you saw, please like, comment, share, subscribe, let your friends see what I'm doing, and I'll catch you in the next video. Have a great one.